his writing on the ContentKing Academy and Search Engine Journal, and his talks at conferences and meetups all across Europe. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce you to Steve, and a big round of applause, please.
There's one thing Simon forgot to mention. I'm really good at baking pancakes. Right, so today we're going to be talking about SEO quality assurance. And some folks might say it's a little boring, but SEO quality assurance is actually how you make more money while doing SEO. Super interesting. So let's dive in. A little about me. 15 years in SEO, used to work in-house, used to work agency side, ran my own agency, then sold that, jumped into the SEO platform space. ContentKing, here's the king, here are the socks. We have an exhibition booth all the way at the back on the right end. If you want socks and t-shirts, come and find us. ContentKing is a real-time SEO auditing and monitoring solution, which means keeps track of your site 24/7 around the clock, looking for issues and changes that heavily impact your SEO performance, and in case of trouble, sends out alerts. Very useful, so if anything happens now, could be really interesting. If anyone's tinkering with the robots text, you'd be notified immediately. So what is SEO quality assurance? Well, if you look at quality assurance on Wikipedia, here's what you get. It's a way of preventing mistakes and defects in manufactured products and avoiding problems when delivering products and services to customers. Boring. If you apply it to SEO, it gets more fun. It's a way of preventing mistakes and defects that negatively impact your site's SEO performance. So it's basically about mitigating SEO issues from making their way into production, and even if they do, trying to prevent them from hitting your bottom line. And the problem we're all dealing with is SEO issues happen. Can I see some hands of people that have had a serious SEO incident in the last 12 months? Okay, see quite some hands. So what we did, we ran a survey and we got 1,300 respondents. And one of the things we kind of got confirmation for is that a lack of SEO quality assurance really hurts your SEO performance. One of the biggest factors holding back the SEO performance. Got around 1,300 respondents. If you're interested in the nitty-gritty details of the statistics, just look at the slides later. It's proper research. What we found is that 85% of the respondents had at least one moderate to high impact SEO issue in the past 12 months. And over 50% of those cases lasted longer than 7 days. 45% had an impact of 10K or more. And it was like 5 to 10% that ran in the millions. So that's the stuff people get fired for. And lack of SEO quality assurance gobbles up resources as well. So what we found is that nearly 2,500 respondents spends more than 1.5 days a week on detecting and fixing SEO issues. Imagine that. And factor in SEO, Twitter, check on LinkedIn, and you've already had half your week. 40% of the respondents found it difficult to find SEO issues in the first place. So it's not easy to find these issues, and it takes a lot of time. And the thing is, search engines never sleep. So you were watching Sophie and David, and they were talking about like big sites, crawl budgets, duplicate content, etc., etc. There's loads of stuff going on. So as we're sitting here now, our sites are being crawled, issues are being found, and rankings go up and down. Lots of stuff happening. And these SEO mistakes are made, and we as SEOs need to make sure we fix them before they have an impact on our SEO performance. And there's many moving parts in SEO. Gary Iles from Google put it eloquently at PopCon. He said, Google has a collection of millions of tiny algorithms that work in unison to spit out a ranking score. So imagine this, and apply that to different markets and different niches within those markets. So you end up with a virtually infinite combination of factors that will determine your ranking eventually. So Google's super complex, we all know that. And then, even this summer, they rolled out 6 confirmed updates and a bunch of unconfirmed ones that Barry Schwartz reported. So they are keeping busy, and these updates are being rolled out more and more, and they're getting more complex. So 10 years ago, it would be like, oh yeah, they're tinkering with the weight of anchor text or whatnot. But now it's more like, yeah, we focus on content quality and blah, blah, blah. So it's getting harder for us to determine, okay, what's really happening. So what we need to do is we need to take control of the stuff that we know and can control. Now that's what SEO Quality Assurance is about. Digital teams are essentially managing perfect storms these days. So Trainline cut 130 million pages. It's mind-boggling. If you were to look at how the teams work together and how they deploy changes, you'll probably see some very advanced frameworks being used. So sites are getting complexer, teams are working agile, pushing changes every day, maybe multiple times a day, multiple teams working on the same site. So you have content teams, technical teams, blah, blah, blah. There's loads and loads of moving parts. And while all that's happening, we as SEOs need to evolve, just like Google's evolving in the way that web dev is being done and digital marketing in general. We've been talking about SEO issues, SEO quality assurance, and I want to look at a couple of SEO disasters that we frequently run into when we talk to clients. And I'm sure a few of those will come in familiar. I love this one, where a client says, hey, the CMS was telling us to update the plugins and the theme, so we just went ahead and did that on a production environment. So that's definitely a no-go, because oftentimes these go wrong, and you want to have a backup in place, so if it goes wrong, you roll it back, no issues. So stuff like this first needs to happen in a staging environment. If everything's good, you did your QA work, you can push it to production. Or how about this one? We tweaked all these page titles that we spent weeks carefully crafting. And then if you see these show up in SERPs, there's another dimension that was added 2 weeks ago where Google started rewriting our titles. And I don't know if you were wondering, it's like, hey, who's been messing with the titles? But one of those things where Google tries to take more control, and it leads to more confusion. So if you know what's been happening on the site, what's been changed, you can at least rule out that the changes were made by people on your team. People just randomly removing pages. I used to run an agency and it happened all the time. So the clients would just jump into the CMS and be like, oh, hey, this was published 3 years ago. It turned out to be like a super important page, had a ton of links, that was there and was being reused every year for a recurring campaign, for instance. Like, you don't want to have this happen, and even if it does happen, you want to make sure that you can jump in immediately and fix the issue. Now this one is nice with core web files coming up as well. So our site got a lot slower because we installed these image gallery plugins and we uploaded like 2-3 megabytes pictures in there. So this is obviously not good for page speed. LCP scores probably went through the roof as well. This is the kind of things you don't want to have in production environments. You need to have a pipeline for this, where you kind of talk about this, like, hey, I'd like to do this and that, and you talk to the design team, you talk to the dev team, you work together to get to a solution that works for everyone. And product pages that are sold out. It seems like an easy to understand concept, but it's actually quite complex dealing with discontinued products. So you have products that are currently sold out, but if you have them in stock on Monday, are you going to no index that page? Are you going to canonicalize? Just keep it up? And what are you going to do in the meantime? Are you going to present alternative products? So there's lots and lots of different ways to go about this. You can also be dealing with product lines that have been discontinued completely. So this is actually a topic that you need to put a lot of thought into. And when a customer goes in and just updates the product inventory, deletes a bunch of pages, yeah, not great, especially when new stock arrives on Monday. Oftentimes you see that, for instance, if you're running a Magento store and it's hooked up to an ERP system where you keep inventory, so you move some stuff around there, hit the button, everything uploads, and yeah, gone. The product pages are. Release has gone bad, happens all the time as well. So for instance, in this case, we were dealing with a production environment that ended up with canonicals to staging environment. Turned out that the canonicals were hard-coded in a template. So client was pushing changes like, oh, we have all this new content. A couple of weeks later, nothing's ranking. Turns out that everything was canonicalized to a staging environment. Not great. Or robots text moving over from staging environments to production environments. Can I see show of hands who's seen this happen? All right, yeah. This is the kind of stuff that you don't want to happen. And even though Google caches these robots text files for like 24 hours, this is the kind of stuff that would keep me up at night. Because yeah, it just happens. So if this happens and the cache expires, crawlers come in, they fetch a new robots text file, they see, oh hey, it says disallowed slash, so it's a no-go for no one. They're going to come back a couple of times, but then, yeah, they're just going to start dropping pages from the index because they don't know what's on it. So apparently it's losing importance, etc., etc. So it's like downward slope from there. This is a very interesting one where product prices drop to zero, and sites inadvertently started advertising products for $0. So yeah, this is the kind of stuff that's bad for business, but it is also the kind of thing that you could get sued for in some industries. So for instance, if you look at the medical industry, where there's a ton of regulations, like this kind of stuff cannot happen. If you take product pricing into account and you couple that with product schema, so it's like code that goes into the source code of the page, you generally don't see it unless you look it up, and it's basically communicating to crawlers like Google's, basically what kind of content you're looking at. So if it's a product, it's like, hey, this product is it's like a t-shirt, it's 30 quid. But oftentimes, when issues occur that affect product pricing, these schema prices are different from what people actually see on the site. So you're actually advertising wrong pages in Google, and Google is very quick to pick up on these and give you those nice snippets in its results. But then people click to the page, and they see completely different price. It's confusing, and it hurts credibility. See, that's plugins that have bugs. So I don't know if any of you get these emails from WordPress, for instance, like, hey, we automatically updated your plugins. Woohoo! So every once in a while, these plugins contain bugs. There's a couple of SEO plugins that have had this issue over the last couple of years that caused attachments to get their own unique URLs. So if you have a site with like 1,000 pages, but you have 50,000 images, you would end up with 50,000 extra pages because every image would get its own unique URL. So you were told about pro budget and how that affects your performance overall. Well, this is great because you're essentially making 50,000 pages available, new pages. So Google's quick to pick up and keen to learn about these URLs. So that's the kind of stuff that you don't want to happen. So things like these need to be coordinated as well. So if you're working on a site that's really important to you, to the business, disable these settings, make sure you keep track of these, and you actually schedule these updates. Sure, security updates and stuff are important, but like, is it worth having your site go down for it? Or having serious issues? By now, you must be like, okay, Steve, so there's lots of stuff going wrong, but I have Google Search Console, I have Google Analytics, I have rank trackers, and I have a crawler. Let's talk about that for a bit. Google Search Console has limited notifications, and they come in late. Google Analytics basically shows you what has already happened. Notifications are very limited, you can set it up, but it's limited. If you see stuff in Google Analytics that you don't like, you're too late. If your rank tracker reports ranking drops, it has already happened. And if you run these like weekly or monthly, you're even further behind. So this isn't going to fix it. If you're using a legacy crawler that takes does like a weekly crawl or even a monthly crawl, you only get a snapshot of what the site looked at that exact moment. By the time the crawl finishes, the data is outdated. So here you have search engines, the orange jumps. So they come back frequently, check what's up. And then you have the purple line that shows you what a legacy crawler does. And it's basically taking snapshots and it's missing loads and loads of changes that happen in the meantime. And then there's ContentKing, that's the blue line. And it's basically keeping track of everything that's going on. So you can easily be alerted about stuff going wrong, or at the very least, have a change log of everything that happened. And the good news is, you can be cool, like Tom Cruise, and yeah, predict these kind of things. So how do you go about implementing SEO quality assurance? Defining an SEO quality assurance policy. So not just handing out CMS admin rights to everyone, and making it clear to everyone that has access to the CMS what it is and what isn't allowed. Don't do releases at 5 p.m. in the afternoon when people crack open a beer and just push the button. Like, no one really wants to work throughout the weekend. A lot of people won't be available, so if anything goes wrong, yeah, it's going to be a shit show. And on Monday, there's going to be a lot of unhappy people. Setting up performance budgets. So core web files obviously become more and more important to SEO. It's been important for decades to have a fast site because faster sites make more money. But yeah, core web files starting to play a role now. Defining per page template what core web file budgets are allowed is a good way to already get a feel for what pages, what the performance of pages is going to be in production. So you can already test that stuff before launching. Communicating well with the team so everyone knows what's up, what's happening. So if there's a big release coming next week, you need to make sure that everyone that's even remotely involved in this, it knows about it and can reserve time to jump in or anything. Involving specialists early on. So Sophie was talking about website migrations, and those are scary. And it gets even scarier when someone says, hey, yeah, we're rebranding next week, what's up? And you're like, oh shit, what about redirects? And what's it gonna look like? And who does content? And how is it different from what we have right now? So you wanna make sure that specialists are involved early on. So even when management is already talking about rebranding, for example, you wanna be involved as an SEO, from the minute, even when they're talking about brands and domain names and stuff like that, because it's essential. And you need to have proper monitoring in place at all times. Monitor all of the pages on your site, not just like a section, because the whole is greater than the sum of its parts when it comes to SEO. You could have these meaningless pages that, when it's a couple 100,000 or millions, do impact your SEO performance. And you get those alerts when something goes wrong. Have the right processes in place. So you need to test before, during, and after launch. And part of that is going to be manual, part of it is going to be automated. You could use continuous integration, for example, to run a bunch of tests before deploying. If the tests fail, the deployment doesn't happen, you can go back to the drawing board and fix the issue. Having a backup plan and a backup team in case things go wrong. So you can jump in, get the crisis team together, roll back a release if it's completely irreparable, or if it's an easy fix, you can make the most of it at that point. But you need to have the people available and the resources available, so you don't have to compromise on quality. Quick recap, like a 1 minute, it's gonna be quick. So lack of SEO is holding back our SEO performance. We need to do better. Lots and lots of people have SEO issues and they are costly. We need to evolve and keep up with Google and the way the web is working right now. Question isn't if issues happen, the question is when. Existing tools fall short, they serve a purpose, but they're not good for monitoring and alerting. You need to do all you can to prevent SEO issues from happening, but they're bound to happen anyway, and then you need to make sure you minimize their impact. Act swiftly. Have monitoring, alerting in place, And in order to help you up your SEO quality assurance game, we put together 45 free trial for you. So if you want to take a peek, go ahead, use this link. Only then you'll get a 45-day trial. We have a booth downstairs as well, all the way in the back to the right. So if you have any questions that I won't be able to answer now, just come there, happy to chat. Is it time for questions?
Yes, stay on stage, please.
Cool.
Yeah. Okay, brilliant. Thank you. So, thank you for coming up and join us.